I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. 10 years ago, if someone had told me I'd be sharing this story, I would have laughed it off. But here I am, looking back at how my whole world turned upside down. I met my wife at a party through my college roommate. She caught my eye immediately, not just because of her looks, but her whole personality. She was working as a marketing executive while I was just starting my IT consulting business. Everything moved pretty fast after that. Within 6 months, we were living together in my apartment and talking about marriage. Our families were thrilled about our relationship. Her parents practically adopted me as their son. Her dad would invite me for golf every weekend, and her mom was always bringing over home-cooked meals. My family loved her too, especially my mom, who had been pestering me to settle down for years. We had a beautiful wedding with about 250 guests. My wife had always wanted a big celebration, and I was happy to give her that. Our careers were going great. She kept climbing the corporate ladder in marketing, while my business grew rapidly. 5 years ago, we bought our dream house in a nice suburb. We even started setting up a college fund for our future children. Everything seemed perfect. Then, about 9 months ago, my wife came home acting weird and excited. She told me she had run into her old college crush at a coffee shop near her office. I remembered her mentioning him before during our dating days. Apparently, he was someone she had been crazy about throughout college but never dated because he was always in relationships. She said they caught up over coffee and exchanged numbers since they both worked in marketing and could network. I didn't think much of it at first. My wife had male friends, and I trusted her completely. But things started changing slowly. First, it was just small things. She started dressing up more for work, bought new clothes, and began working out more intensely. I actually encouraged it, thinking she was just focusing on her health and career. Then the late nights at work started becoming more frequent. She would text saying she had client meetings or work events. Sometimes she wouldn't come home until 9 o'clock or 10 p.m. When she was home, she was always on her phone, texting constantly. She would turn her phone away when I walked by and started taking calls in another room. She password protected all her devices, which she had never done before. The red flags were adding up, but I kept trying to convince myself I was being paranoid. My wife would get defensive if I asked about her late nights, saying I was being controlling and didn't support her career. She started picking fights over small things and became very critical of everything I did. Looking back, I realized she was probably trying to justify her actions by making me out to be a bad husband. Things came to a head about 3 months ago. I had a problem with my laptop and needed to send an urgent email to a client. My wife was in the shower, so I used her laptop, which she had left open on the kitchen counter. She had forgotten to log out of Facebook Messenger. I know I shouldn't have looked, but something just felt wrong. What I found destroyed me completely. There were months of messages between my wife and her college crush, not just friendly chats, but explicit conversations, photos, and detailed accounts of their meetups. They had been sleeping together at his apartment during all those late work nights. They talked about their feelings for each other, how they wished they had gotten together in college, how exciting their affair was. They even made fun of me, calling me boring and predictable. I felt physically sick reading those messages, but I forced myself to take screenshots of everything. Over the next few days, I went into investigation mode. I hired a private investigator who got photos and videos of them together. I recovered deleted messages from her phone backup that showed they had been planning weekend trips together, making up elaborate lies to tell me. She had even helped him pick out an apartment that was convenient for their meetups. The level of deception was mind-blowing. While we were having dinner together and planning our future, she was planning secret meetings with him. While I was working hard to grow our nest egg, she was spending money on hotel rooms and gifts for him. She had created separate email accounts and social media profiles just to communicate with him. I spent weeks gathering evidence and consulting with divorce lawyers. I moved half our savings to a separate account and got copies of all important documents. I wanted to be fully prepared before confronting her. The hardest part was acting normal around her while knowing what she was doing. Every kiss felt like a betrayal. Every "I love you" was a lie. Then came our 8th wedding anniversary. My wife suggested we go to this expensive restaurant downtown to celebrate. She seemed nervous throughout dinner, barely touching her food and drinking more wine than usual. After dessert came, she dropped the bomb. She wanted to try having an open marriage. She started talking about how monogamy was outdated and how many modern couples were exploring ethical non-monogamy. She said she felt sexually unfulfilled and thought seeing other people would actually strengthen our marriage. She even had the nerve to say it would be good for me, too, that I could also date other women. I sat there listening to her try to manipulate me into accepting her affair, my blood boiling. When she finished, I calmly asked if she already had someone in mind. She got flustered and denied it, saying she just wanted us to explore options together. That's when I pulled out the folder with all the evidence, screenshots, photos, everything. The look on her face was priceless. All the color drained from her face, and she started crying. First, she tried to deny it, saying the messages were taken out of context. Then she switched to begging me not to show anyone, especially her family. She promised she would end things with him immediately, and we could work on our marriage. She said it was just sex with him, and she really loved me. I didn't say a word. I just got up and left her sitting there at the restaurant. I had already packed a bag which was in my car. I spent the night at a hotel, and the next morning I sent all the evidence to both our families and close friends. I wanted everyone to know exactly who she was and what she had done. I also filed for divorce that morning. Things got messy after that. My wife tried spinning the whole story to make herself look like the victim. She made long posts on social media about how I was emotionally controlling and manipulative throughout our marriage. According to her posts, I had isolated her from friends, controlled her finances, and monitored her movements. She claimed that's why she sought emotional support from her college crush, and things just happened naturally from there. The worst part was that some people actually believed her. A group of her work friends started sending me hateful messages, calling me abusive and saying I had no right to expose her private life. Some even claimed I had doctored the evidence to frame her. These were people who had been to our house for dinner parties, who had seen how we lived, yet they chose to believe her lies. My brother wanted me to respond publicly and defend myself, but I decided to stay quiet. I knew the truth would come out eventually. And it did. One day, my wife showed up at my office hysterical. Her college crush had been secretly recording their encounters without her knowledge. Now he was threatening to release the videos unless she paid him $50,000. She couldn't go to her parents because they had blocked her, and she had already spent most of her savings on expensive hotels and gifts for him during their affair. She begged me to help her, crying about how this would destroy her life completely. She tried appealing to our history together, saying that despite everything, she knew I was a good person who wouldn't want to see her suffer like this. I just laughed and told her to handle it herself, just like she handled destroying our marriage by herself. She ended up going to the police about the blackmail attempt. That's when everything really exploded. During their investigation, the police discovered he had done this to multiple women over the years. They searched his apartment and found dozens of recordings of different women, all secretly filmed without consent. He had been running this scheme for years, seducing married women, recording everything, and then either blackmailing them or moving on to his next victim. The biggest shock came when I learned that one of his victims was Kate, my wife's former best friend. They had a mysterious falling out 3 years ago, and my wife always gave vague explanations about growing apart. Well, now I knew the real story. Kate's husband reached out to me after hearing about the arrest. Turns out Kate also had an affair with him 3 years ago, and my wife had helped cover it up. She would provide alibis for Kate, help her delete messages, and even book hotel rooms under her name. My wife knew exactly what kind of person he was because she had watched him do this to her best friend. When Kate finally ended things and confessed everything to her husband, she told my wife she wanted to warn other women about him. My wife convinced her to keep quiet, saying it would only hurt Kate's husband more if the truth came out. The real reason, I now realize, was that my wife had already started her emotional affair with him through social media and didn't want him exposed. Kate and her husband managed to save their marriage through counseling, and Kate cut off contact with my wife out of guilt. My wife played the victim then too, telling everyone Kate had betrayed their friendship over something petty. The whole time, she was the one betraying everyone. The extent of my wife's deception was staggering. She watched him manipulate and destroy her best friend's marriage, then willingly got involved with him herself. She didn't warn me about what kind of person he was. Even worse, chat logs from her office show they'd actually reconnected at a business conference 2 years ago, not a coffee shop like she claimed. She had been planning this for years, waiting for him to be single and move back to our city. She had even helped him land a job at a marketing firm here, recommending him to industry contacts. Today, a year later, I'm finally free. The divorce is official, and I've moved into a new place that has no memories of her. My business has grown from 5 to 25 people, with offices in 3 states. I'm even dating someone new, a pediatric nurse I met through my sister. She's everything my ex-wife wasn't: honest, straightforward, and understanding of my trust issues. My ex-wife's life has fallen apart completely. She lost her job when they discovered she had been using company resources for her affair. She's had 5 different jobs in the past year and can't keep anything stable. Her family still won't speak to her. Her college crush took a plea deal, 3 years in prison plus registration as a sex offender. During his sentencing, it came out that he had done this to over 20 women in the past decade. Yet she still posts about waiting for him and how the system is corrupt. Looking back now, I realize the woman I thought I married never existed. She was playing a role the entire time, waiting for something she thought was better to come along. The worst part is thinking about all those years we tried for a baby. Thank God we never succeeded. I still get angry sometimes thinking about everything, but mostly I just feel relieved to be out of that situation. A year ago, I thought my life was over, but now I can see it was actually just beginning. The whole experience taught me to trust my instincts and never compromise my values for anyone. To anyone going through similar betrayal, it gets better. Focus on yourself, don't let them manipulate you back, and remember that their actions reflect on them, not you. Build something new instead of trying to fix what they broke. The best revenge really is living well.